Well, hello everybody. Hello, Lizzie. It's lovely to see you
Oh,
again. And hello, Alistair. So,
Hello.
hello, my darling. So we are here. It's the 10th anniversary of the Great British Sewing Bee that went out on television. And last night, which was Tuesday, the 21st of May, at 9 o'clock, that first episode went out with 12 brand new contestants. So what we're going to do tonight or today is just to have a little chat about what we thought, where we would maybe look at things differently. And I'm going to throw questions at you. So obviously we had 12 new contestants with a new presenter. First of all, let's get the controversy out of the way. What did you think of the new presenter, Lizzie?
well, when you compare him to the ones that went before, and I suppose we shouldn't really, we should take him as face value. The first thing that my John said, "Who's he?" And I had to explain who he was. That's fine. He's a lovely, lovely actor. I do love him, but he doesn't have that at the moment. We've got to give him time. He doesn't have that buzz about him. He doesn't have that spark. I think sometimes when we had Joe Lycett, he was such a great distraction. If you were really concentrating on somebody and thinking, "Oh, please, please get this right," or "Oh my goodness me, what happened there?" And then you'd get Joe come in with a really light-hearted banter, and you all of a sudden you'd feel a little bit more relaxed, a little bit happier. And I know we shouldn't compare, so I'm going to try not to do that. But I think he's got potential.
Yes. And Claudia's a hard act to follow the very beginning, wasn't she? So yes.
Yes,
What's your
lovely.
thoughts, Alistair, about the same?
Yeah, around about the same. I think he's just sort of getting into his sort of groove.
Mm.
Um, I sometimes find the when they're using like Patrick and Esme in some of the like the jokes, it's a
Naff.
bit like yeah, it's a bit sort of like watching, your own mum sort of like, um, if I stuck a camera in front of my mum, she would be sort of like, so it's a little bit like that, but yeah, no, I think some of the jokes that are being written for him, I think whoever's writing them, I think they need to
Up his game.
I think they do. I think the audience is not stuck in the 60s where, it's sort of like that really, really sort of like, whereas like Claudia, I mean, she is
Oh,
really a hard to follow, but like Claudia, she naturally is funny
yes.
and
Yes.
she wasn't scripted, whereas the rest of them, even some of the comedians, seem to be scripted, which just seems odd. But anyway, but no, he seems a really, really lovely fella.
I think
So,
we should just
yeah.
I think we should just leave him to be natural and just ask questions as and when he should. I agree with you. And I noticed on Facebook, certainly after the show, that a lot of the comments were about Esme's acting ability. But let's move on onto, onto what the real competition's about, which was the 12 contestants. Now, obviously, they're going to be harking back to that first series, and we had a little glimpse of the first lot of contestants, including Stuart. I noticed Stuart Hillard in the background, and the harks back to the A-line skirt, but with a twist. Now, I'm going to say this straight away that they are given the pattern, and Patrick and Esme made a big thing about the fact that they had rewritten that pattern. So, with that in mind, and it was verbalized, with that in mind, I know where Alistair's going. I'm going to get Lizzie's first opinion on that A-line skirt.
Oh, well, I'm not sure how you could actually reinvent the wheel with that one. I think it was a hard challenge because they were using denim and they were having to create all those buttonholes. And first of all, I would I would be very nervous about doing buttonholes on a machine that I hadn't used before for buttonholes. And you don't get a lot of time, well, I would assume not a lot of time to practice. Buttonholes can be very hit and miss depending on the attachment on the machine and the power of the machine. And also, I think they had. If it was me, because years ago, dressmaking was my living. but I would have had the fabric the other way round, so the foot could grab the whole fabric and test it out first. Obviously, you're going to measure to make sure, but I thought it was a hard one, because I thought, first of all, I thought that obviously the power of the machine, could it go through all that denim, especially on the waistband? The rest I thought, yeah, okay, fine. But that waistband placket, there's an awful lot of fabric going on there. And unless you're experienced, I personally would have cut a lot of that bulk away to make that lie flat. Even I would have staggered the fabric inside, perhaps, to make sure it lay a little bit flatter. But those are all little things that you only pick up as you've lived your life and you've done these things before. I think they did incredibly well. I mean, nobody finished, which is interesting. I did think somebody had finished, but they hadn't. And I thought it was interesting that they were given the time. What was it? 3 hours.
3 hours, yes.
So it depends on how fast you stitch. Because I watched, was it Don? Is it Don, his name?
Yes. The older guy, yes.
Well, he was very, very slow and precise with his stitching. He was a chunka man, right? And that's no bad thing. Whereas other people would have that confidence and go vroom. And sorry about the sound effects, but they would have that confidence. So it's a lot for some people to do. Depends what you've done before. Somebody said they'd done top stitching before. That's a great start, because that line has got to be absolutely spot on. Maybe lengthen your stitch so you could go a little bit faster, but I just thought it was an interesting choice. Okay, they harked back to the first series, which I think the whole programme was based on. I thought that was a bit sad in a way, because 10th anniversary, I expected a little bit more pizzazz. But yeah, anyway, that's my opinion.
The other thing I will say, going about the machines, is I never saw anybody changing a needle to a denim needle, particularly going through those 3 layers. So
Yeah.
you can have a less oomph machine, but if you change those needles, maybe even consider using a walking foot as well, would have helped considerably to get through the layers.
But the one thing I did notice, Kim, sorry to interrupt, was the actual sample itself was perfection. Now, years ago, I used to make dresses for Liberty and Harrods and Harvey Nicks and Neiman Marcus all over the place, and they had to be Liberty fabrics, top quality. And all I would get would be the sample, the actual dress or the night dress or whatever it was. I didn't have a pattern that all the pieces are already cut. And I didn't have any instruction, not a jot, but I would have the sample. Now, I would use that sample as my benchmark. If for me, if I couldn't get my whatever it was, the buttonholes, the seams, whatever it was, the same as the sample, then as far as I'm concerned, I'd failed. But that was my benchmark. So all I'm saying is that skirt was exquisitely made. I would love to know if it was made on the machines that the contestants used. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
An industrial job to me.
Right, Alistair. Go for it. He's got his glasses on.
Let me just get my notes. I'm only joking. Those are actually TV orders. I will be really, really quick. So there's one thing that actually Lizzy just picked up on, and also Kim. So they do have the physical finish sample.
Yeah.
To reference. So if the pattern's not making sense, they can go up and they can look at the sample and have a look and do and see. There are lots and lots of, I thought in my head, this particular one, if you think about what they did in the final section, this was a very simple, straightforward, almost sort of like straight lines, but it had to be very, very clean. They were looking about it was all about the finish. But in principle, an A-line skirt is a very simple thing. And obviously what Esme and Patrick did to zhuzh it up was put six buttons with buttonholes down, which that was just going to go spectacularly wrong no matter what the contestants did. I thought, for instance, not a single one of the contestants, none of those skirts fitted the dummies, not a single one. So my viewpoint is that in actual fact, I think they did them a little bit of a disservice, because I don't think the pattern was necessarily correct. And also the way that they were asking them to construct them, so you get the visual that says, well, they're going to stitch all the panels round, then they're going to fold the plackets in and do what have you. If we were doing that in production, we would make sure that we would take the two front sections, we would create the plackets first, and then we would create the buttonholes before we even attach the rest of the skirt together, or even the waistband. And then we would put the buttonholes in place. Then what you need to do is you need to offer the placket onto the other placket, and then you see exactly where the buttonholes are, and then you mark the points of where the thing, because you might be a few millimeters out. If you're going by the pattern, but you haven't quite accurately, or it's the buttonhole's a little bit ski width, you're going to get that Betty Boop look. It's never going to do. You've got to use the garment you're creating in front of you, lay the plackets on, and then mark them yourself. That's the proper way of doing it. But I mean, some of them obviously had never done a buttonhole. I mean, some of them had the buttonhole right over the placket where it started. I'm thinking, you've seen everyone using that, but I just wouldn't necessarily have used that. There was lots of things that they could have done. For instance, when you're stitching large straight lines, start from the top of the waistband, especially when you're top stitching, and go all in one direction. So start from top to bottom. So you've got, if there's extra drag on the machine, if you come down from the waistband to the hemline and then you flip over because you're down at the hemline, you think, oh, I'll just whiz up that way. You're going tension down this way, tension up this way. So you're going to end up getting sort of like ruffles. But there were lots of other things as well. It was all about the precision of the millimeters. Again, Lizzie, you said about the size of the stitch. They were using such a small stitch. And when you use a small stitch and you're going through extra layers, when the stitch goes through, it will appear smaller. So if they'd set it at a 4.5 or a 5, it still would have looked like a nice small stitch.
Yeah.
And if it'd taken their time, they would have had that uniformity. Now, in those machines, I know there would have been a zipper foot. So if they were using a normal foot, but they just couldn't quite get the eye on the actual seam, they could have used a zipper foot, which would have given them at least a head start, freehand top stitching to get exactly where they needed to be. Because when you're using a double sided foot, you're concentrating in the middle, but the other side sort of confusing you. So I just think the pattern was a little bit, I don't think the pattern was true, because when you saw them, none of them were meeting up, and the plackets were just off center. Nothing was meeting in the middle. So it was, I think, for a very first one, from what you see, what they were all doing in the end challenge, I actually thought, you're all really competent sewers, but this is essentially straight lines. And I thought, I didn't necessarily, I think in the time frame with all the buttonholes, that was the tricky part, the buttonholes, but the rest of it, that was all straight lines.
Now, interestingly, Susie came last in that challenge. And Don, who is the older guy, his engineering background is where his preciseness comes from. And Lizzie, I think, he takes his time when he's sewing, and I've no doubt if he was to do that at home, because it was actually commented on that what he had done was really, really good. He just hadn't got finished in the time. So I think that's going to be his big issue. And the winner of that one was Alex, who actually was the only one who had done some top stitching. Hers was really neat. The other thing with the top stitching, of course, it was all in contrasting colours. So it was going to glare at you, as we all know, if the stitching was just that little bit wobbly. And Lizzie, you'll probably know, on these domestic machines, sometimes the stitches aren't actually straight. Sometimes they'll go off as a little bit of a kilter.
That's right. And that's where your denim needle would have come in, because that would have helped, especially, because it's top stitching, lengthening your stitch, a proper needle. You probably would have had straighter stitching because the needle matched the hole you were making, etc., etc. And the thread comes into it as well. Wouldn't have used top stitch thread. I wouldn't have used that. But even so, like you say, the length of the stitch, you'd still see the prettiness of the colour that would have shone through. The one person that I did pick up on, I think it was Marcus. I think it was him, because in the made to measure, he made the most amazing dress with beautiful buttonholes all the way down. He said he had a little bit of a button phobia by the time he got to that, obviously, because they'd been scared to death on the first challenge. And when they looked at his skirt, I think his skirt was white, which I thought was an interesting choice. And it was very neat. And he'd got, I think, 1.5 buttonholes done. And I thought, oh, I would have liked to have seen that finished with him, because he got potential. He got it because he finished the one for the made to measure. So it was all there. And I thought he was a bit of a dark horse. I'd be looking out for him.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the transformation challenge. Now, it was so funny because one of them, I think it was Neil, said, oh, the transformation challenge, that is, and this is a quote, they give you a kid's paddling pool and you have to turn it into evening wear. And I burst out laughing because when we reviewed it last season, he couldn't have summed that up better. Bless him. So this one was, again, harken back to the original series, the first series. Now, in the first series, they were given a T-shirt and told to alter the neckline, which is quite straightforward. In this one, in the 1.5 hours, they were given 3 T-shirts and told to create something that would not look like a T-shirt. And the big thing that they made a point of was about the combination of the prints and designs of the fabric, which is controversial in itself because we all have different viewpoints. If I start with you, Alistair, this time, very quickly, have you got any thoughts on that transformation challenge?
Well, I'd just like to say just before that, I think the contestants for me in this season, there's a few of them where you can tell that they're on this series because they're wanting to launch themselves as a brand. It's not for me. It doesn't. This season, this time doesn't feel like it's the home hobbyist sewer that you're sort of like wanting to champion. They're all quite aware of what other people from the Bee have done, so there's a bit of a shift change in terms of that. And also we know from Deborah, who came onto our last chat, we know that you have to submit examples of your work beforehand to show your competency. So they are carefully selected. I thought that, so the transformation challenge, as you know, they're not my favorite part of the program at all. I know it's a bit of fun, and I know that that's you end up having to sort of like take from it. But I just thought a lot of them, it just does look like they are just t-shirts, and they all. This was a design challenge. It wasn't necessarily a sewing challenge, because even Patrick went on about, let's see what they do, how they express their creativity. And I'm like, but this is a sewing competition. It's all about the execution of sewing, not necessarily how, somebody might be an excellent sewer, but they might not actually have the capability of designing something. You might give them a pattern and they'll make it beautifully. Give a designer a pattern and just ask them to make it. It might look like a dog's dinner, because some designers can't sew, but they can design. So it's like yin and yang. It wasn't my favorite. And some of the creations were a bit questionable in terms of, sorry, my light's just gone off. A little bit questionable. So not my favorite. But Esme seems to really love this challenge, and Yeah, I'm just not, I'm not sure. I would have hoped that they would have done something a little bit different for the 10th anniversary. I just thought they're missing a bit of a trick. They could have really have done something really quite cool for the 10th anniversary.
They could have
Maybe
given
that's
kids, could have given them a kids paddling pool.
yes, to make an evening dress.
Evening dress. Lizzie, what was your thoughts on that transformation challenge?
Well, Bertha, the first thing I picked up was the fact that, like Alistair said, about the creativity side of it, and having the design elements and making it quirky and fun and all of that. And that's what they were looking for. And I think Esme said, yes, it's all about the choices of fabrics that they choose. So I thought, well, first of all, the fabrics they choose are bound to be jersey. It's a t-shirt. I'm assuming it's going to be pretty much all jersey. And also they don't get any choices. We've got to get that over, that the poor things have to go to the rail and just pull 3 things off regardless. So I think it's very brave that when they first go and get their t-shirts, they have no idea, no concept of what they're going to grab, because everybody else is in there. And I saw one of the girls, I don't know who it was, I'm not going to tell tales, but she literally dive bombed everybody and picked 3 out. And I thought, well, even, yeah, I can, it's a bit like a sale room, isn't it?
Yeah.
I thought, oh gosh, this is so not fair. They should perhaps have 3 that all very similar to each other, rather than being left with, because for instance, I don't know if I think it was, I'm going to say Neil, but I'm not sure, but one of them had the Browns t-shirts, etc., etc., and Esme made a comment and said, oh, well, I don't like brown. And then I thought, well, actually, that person didn't have any choice whatsoever. They just had to pull out the 3. So I thought that was a shame that happened.
Sorry?
Was that the cardigan thing? I actually thought that was quite nice in terms of.
That was who did the cardigan. So let me just have a quick look here. Susie did the asymmetric top. Luke did the graphics. It was like patchwork blocked. Ailsa, who did the multi-paneled cardigan with the collar, which I thought was really good. To put that into, Esme said she didn't like the colours of that, but to put that into perspective, Ailsa is the one who did the denim dress at the end, and her style is very non-gender. You could see, so the fact that Esme didn't like the colours, I think she negated. I thought the cardigan was, I'm like you, Alistair, cardigan was good, and she put a collar on, and it was really good.
Yeah, nice and neat. And yeah, I mean, the winner, I thought that outfit was interesting. I liked she, obviously Esme likes all these quirky things with the hole and all the rest of it, and how it's gathered around. I thought technically that was actually really very good. But I think it's so difficult to, because the girl that said, you know, give me inspiration. I felt really sorry for her, because I'd be the same. You got these 3 pieces of fabric in front of you. You haven't chosen them. You've no idea. They're probably, none of them all go with each other, and you've got to create something. And I think the trouble is you're focused on the fact that it's a t-shirt. You've got to get your head of, and I think I would have literally cut squares. I would have literally ignored the sleeves, the neckline. I'd have done a fairly neat sort of square. And Kim, they have access to Veseline products, don't they? So they could have stabilized it, even if it was light, but they only had an hour and a half. So you think, gosh, are they going to have time to cut all the squares out and then patch it together and then create something from that piece of fabric? Because they probably would have got about 1.5 meters of fabric out of those t-shirts. But again, it's time, isn't it?
It is down to time. It's also going back to the products that they have available in it's the education. And if they don't know about those products, they're going for the pretty fabrics, they're going for the buttons, they're going for the ribbons, they're going for the trims. They aren't going for the things that make things easier. So even going back to that first pattern challenge with the buttonholes, if they'd put a piece of maybe stitch and tear and just ran it down, or ran it a light interfacing down, that would have stabilized their buttonholes when they were using the denim. But if you don't know that, which is what I would say to people, stick that little bit of interfacing. It doesn't have to be a whole row, just has to be enough to stabilize around your buttonhole, that will give you a better finish. So yes, you're right, Lizzie.
But
The other,
perhaps what it is, it's just not trendy. It's
No.
just not trendy because it goes back to the proper dressmaking days where everything was stabilized and interfaced, and you know, all the understitching and all the things that you used to do. French seams, I love all that sort of stuff, and that goes back a bit. And perhaps it's just not trendy now. I mean, look at the hat.
The
That
hat is
whatever.
perfect.
You know, it's like I'm shouting at the screen, get some blinking stabilizer in it, and it won't be floppy, and it might hold its shape, and it might look fabulous, and it might win. That's the difference, isn't it, between making an effort and okay, the creativity was there, but it wasn't finished, and that'll never win you the points, will it?
When I saw
So,
him making the hat, I had high hopes and expectations for
yeah,
him, thinking, yes, it's
yeah,
completely different.
yeah.
It's not going to look like a t-shirt. And when I saw him just putting it was reversible, so he had the two layers of fabric, nothing in there. If you're making bucket hats at home, and it seems to be a thing with him, please
Yeah.
use the stabilizer in that brim or in the actual, the shape of the hat, and it's going to look marvelous. Yeah.
There
I
we are.
just, the other thing to mention, when you use existing jersey that you're not cutting it fresh from the thing, it will grow at an alarming rate. So if you're cutting a neckline and you're putting it on the dummy and you're what have you, you might start with a neckline up there, but within 5-10 minutes, you'll end up with a Kylie number where it's a plunging neckline, which you just did not intend to do. And it starts to grow and grow and grow. And the more you handle it and try and tweak it, and they're almost it was a draping challenge essentially, because they were having to cut all the sections out. But when you're working with that type of fabric, it's just going to keep growing. So if you cut a sleeve, which for the first 5 minutes looked as if it was going to go in the armhole that you've created, I can guarantee you that as soon as you offer it up and put it through a sewing machine, it's not going to fit. It's just not going to do it. But I actually really liked the one you liked, Emily. I thought that cardigan, I just thought it was well proportioned. It was well and in actual fact, the hat I was not keen on at all. It was just too flow. I wouldn't even use it as a lampshade. It just you would be sort of like that. But no, I thought the cardigan, which Esme just sort of dismissed, I thought in actual fact that was a wearable garment.
Yes. What else I noticed? Sorry, Alice, I keep interrupting. I tell you what else I noticed. I think it was Esme said about Lauren's, which was the little skirt with the frill, and she said it was too simple. And I thought, my goodness me, that is a beautifully fitting skirt. So that's a mark, tick. But to do a frill in jersey, and it was really neat because some of the outfits were a little bit dodgy. That was a beautifully neat frill. And maybe on first glance, yes, it was simple, but actually technically to get all those gathers looking beautiful, she spent some time on that. And actually that's not simple at all and I suppose perhaps because she did it so well and it looks so cute, that's how it looks simple, but actually technically it's not. You've got to do all those gathers.
And she came, I wrote it down, too simple. I mean, it was lovely, and she actually came 11th in that challenge, which was ridiculous.
Should not
have. And Alex, who did the beautiful cardigan, came 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th in that challenge. So yes, so it's a different one. They like the cutting and the
twiddling.
Yeah. So we're going to move swiftly on to the last challenge, which is the made to measure. Now, this one, they're given 5 hours, but they're also allowed to practice this at home. And I think that paid off with the winner at the end, because Susie had to practice that 4 times. The actual presenter had said, would you wear this dress? And she said, well, I've got 4 of them at home, which I thought was quite interesting. It was supposed to be a casual day dress. They went back again to series 1. I am hoping that they are not going to do this all the way through the Sewing Bee. But what was really interesting this time is we had a mix of recycled fabrics, tablecloth, and the winner actually used a duvet. We had the batik handmade fabric, which was beautiful. We had some chiffon, and then we also had what you would just buy, off the shop bolts, off your bolts. So we'll start with you, Alistair, this time with regards to what did you think the brief was? Casual day dress.
I think some of them absolutely nailed it, but this was a fitting challenge, and there was a lot that seemed to be slightly rushed. I actually thought that Luke's one, which, if we forget that he created the fabric himself, which was a beautiful fabric, I actually completely disagreed with the judges, especially Patrick. He was on about the blocking of it was completely off. Well, Patrick, you're not actually really a designer, and I actually thought it was executed really beautifully and actually well, and it's extremely on trend. And the thing is that is a silhouette and a shape that a lot of say, not just younger people, but even older people, that would be flattering on a 60-year-old, 80-year-old lady, or a whippersnapper at 15. It would just look that particular dress would look stunning on lots and lots of different people. I thought his attention to detail, I thought the yoke was really beautifully done, that he had done some top stitching. It was just really, really well thought out. They did say at the beginning that, this is where they're either going to go, it's either going to go horribly wrong or it's going to go really, really well. And I think some of them, especially, I mean, who would choose chiffon to do on your first one? Because it is one of those fabrics you have to let it drop before you hem it, because if you go ahead and start hemming it, it just becomes so uneven. And she had given herself so much work, but it just wasn't fitting. I mean, the bust area that just needed the strap pulling up and pinned at the back a little bit more, and that would have made that symmetrical, little tweaks like that. I thought Tom's was actually really, really clean and pretty, and that summed up the brief. Comforts, she hadn't enough volume in that, because it was supposed to be a sort of like a lantern-esque, and there was just no volume in her model. Was slightly curvy as well, which didn't help that she had made it slightly smaller, but she needed more volume in that. The pockets, I felt, were placed in the wrong place. That's why they were completely conflicting. And if you've got nothing to attach the pocket onto to keep it forward, then you're in a bit of a sort of a sticky situation. I would have just have not put the pockets in. I would have just the thing do. Alex, the ruching at the waist, again, she put in a lining. And again, I don't really think they're looking for linings. So save yourselves, or if you're going to apply for next year, save yourselves all the hassle. Just put facings in it, because they're not actually looking inside the garments. Don't bother with a lining. Marcus's, the fit on the top, that was such a shame across the top, but he had made the shoulders way too tight, and that's something that would have been easy. They measured their models because they had to adapt the pattern, but he just obviously didn't adapt the pattern. He had measured the length and the waist and all that kind of thing, which fitted lovely, but that focal point over here, it was so tight. Pasha's was nice. Janet's, the green one, yeah, the ruching was just all off. That was an easy fix. If you put a center front benchmark, a line, and then you take your time to ruche it equally, then it would have worked. Is it Alicia?
Yes, with the denim. Yes.
Yeah, I thought
Ailsa,
that,
is it Ailsa?
yeah, I thought that was absolutely awful. It was just
Don't
yeah,
hold back.
I know, but I did feel bad for her, and I'm not judging her because this is the only one, but I just thought the execution, the raw seams, the bulk. I even saw her she was taking two of the seam allowance, she was taking the double thickness and she was trying to roll hem that in. What you need to do with that, you need to clear out some of the bulk. So you need to trim back the under seam allowance and use the top seam allowance to then delicately fold over. Because it's that thick fabric, you can cut it really close to the actual seam, and that takes out the bulk of the seam. But if you're trying to do that, it's never going to work well. Lauren, I thought with the chiffon was so ambition. Luke, loved. Georgie, I thought was nice. And who else did I have on here? Neil, I thought the finish really was awful. And then Susie's, I thought was very nice. A simple use of blocking I put. The actual darts that they were like way too high. That was like adding like, you know, an extra set of nipples on there. That was just that they were way too high. But yeah, and I thought the actual winner, I thought, yeah, it was nice, but I championed. Look, I thought he actually should have won that challenge.
Right.
And that's me.
Lizzy, what's your feedback, my darling?
I totally agree with Alistair.
Oh, don't, for goodness sake. Don't agree with him.
I've been listening to Kim. She's just, you know, she's been on one all morning.
Oh.
I know I can be sometimes a little bit controversial with my opinion of the Sewing Bee. However, I have to be good and well behaved. Yes,
No.
Luke is. No, have you got another hour? Because you know I could go into. Luke with his painted fabric. Oh my gosh, that ticked my box double time because he made the effort, and I obviously had pre-made all that fabric. And it's possible that he will have actually made that properly at home, and I think it really showed those people that hadn't made it, because the one with the denim, is it Ailsa?
Yes. Oh.
There's no way that she would have made that at home, because there's no way, as she started to put her double stitching in to gather, I thought, nope, that's not going to happen. First of all, she's never going to get that gathered up beautifully, never in a million years. And then she's going to have to stitch her bodice to the gathers. I thought, no, that's not going to happen either. And then I saw the cord. I thought, well, actually, that's quite interesting. I might use that at some point. But I thought, that's right from the get-go. I thought, you have not done this at home, because you will have thrown that in the bin and thought, no, I'm not going to. If I use denim, I'm going to use a lightweight denim. I'm going to, like a chambray or something like that, so you get the same effect. With and the gathering and all of that, and I loved the thought of the clasp just here. I thought that was brilliant. It wasn't executed very well, but I loved it. But whoa, what a big mistake. And then of course Neil. Now, although Neil made a right mess, bless his heart, I felt so sorry for him, of the collar when he stitched in. I think he stitched in the zip or the whichever way around. And he caught all the collar into his stitching, and really you could see it. You could see where he'd stitched it in. I thought, and you know what? From the front, Neil's dress, although I disapproved strongly of his fabric choice, I don't think he practiced that at home. It actually looked very beautiful. I loved the collar. It sat absolutely perfectly in the middle, and actually from the front it looked beautiful. And I thought, oh, I know he didn't finish the hem, that's another matter, but actually the bodice and how it looked, I thought was brilliant. The other one, of course, right up my street, I'm going to love this girl, and that's Georgie, because she used a tablecloth, and I'm so into that. Pardon the pun. And she obviously had to cut her fabrics perfectly to get that symmetry, and although she didn't finish it, and you can't call that a made-to-measure dress. There was one or two that you couldn't call a made-to-measure dress. You could have made that for a size 10 or a size 18. But I love her already. I love her because she's using tablecloths, which I adore, and I cut up as well. But so that overall, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I love the milkmaid dress. Was it Pasha? And that was so cute. I love that. I mean, it's a bit niche. You know, I would look hideous in Tesco wearing that, but she would look gorgeous, which is the main thing. But other than that, that's me. That's my general opinion of the made to measure. It wasn't.
So there was a couple of things
Maybe
that
Lizzy, it's the backdrop you're using. Maybe she shouldn't wear that dress and shop in Tesco's. Maybe you should try maybe Fortnum's or something like that. Get a bit of gilt in the
I do,
background. Maybe
darling.
it's all
I
about
do.
staging, darling. Staging.
100%.
there was a couple of things on a technical side of things. Don's Gaudet dress, the invisible zip. Patrick has particularly commented on that. It was an invisible zip. He is amazing at the technical things. Gathering, talking about the gathering with the cord. If you use the right threads to gather, so with Ailsa's, you could have used a linen thread, a stronger thread that would have helped. When I saw literally the cord that you'd be tying your parcels up with, going great in theory, doesn't always work on everything. How many people had not, particularly who was it with the spaghetti straps, had not practiced really well with the loop turners?
Nah.
I mean, Alistair gave me some loop turners a while ago, and I have to be honest, the first few times I had a nightmare, and I actually rang him up and said, because I'm used to the prim ones where you poke it through, which doesn't always work. Alistair's tip was cut your fabric on the bias.
Ah.
And as soon as I cut the fabric on the bias, it's a doddle. It's so the one tip that Alistair gave me was cut it on the bias. So anybody who's wanting to use those loop turners, don't be put off by it, because if you cut it on the straight fabric, you need to trim that seam right the way up, get it through. It will work, but practice makes perfect, and she obviously hadn't practiced enough.
Well, I tell you what was really unfair, right? They showed obviously that, you know, it's all about the entertainment. Let's be honest. But anyway, so they showed her really struggling. She said she spent 5 minutes trying to turn this rouleau loop through, and I thought, you know, she's a poor girl. Just leave it. She did right. She did right by going and getting ribbon, but you saw her struggling for a few seconds, and then they quickly cut to somebody that just pulled theirs through. I don't know who it was, but it was just a quick cut and about 3 seconds of this person pulling it through. I thought, how cruel are you?
I know. But don't be put off by those, because I was originally, I had the hot sweats, the whole lot. I felt for her. And I thought, if you only cut it on the bias. So yes. So the winner obviously was Susie, who I think had got the boost in the transformation challenge. So she was, you know, that confidence had been lifted. And Neil, God love him, went home. He actually said he wasn't, now he was great for his quotes. He was leaving because he was out of his depth. I think he maybe was in this particular competition, but I think it goes back to, are we looking, and you've brought it up, Alistair, already, are we looking for home sewers that we can aspire to? Or are we looking for people who are wanting to use this as a launch pad for certain bees who in the past have used that as a launch pad and become famous in the industry? So that's a question for the viewers to ask, and we would really like comments after this show to us, to tell us what your thoughts are about that. Now, before we leave, I want to have a little bit of a plug here. Behind Lizzy, if you have a little look, you will see her first self-published book. Now, Lizzy, you tell us about it and where we can get it, and you've very generously offered our viewers a discount code as well.
Yes, absolutely. So if you head to lizzycurtis.com, that's Lizzy with a Y, you'll see all my patterns and bits and bobs, and the book is on there and you can order it. It's there. I've got it in stock here in my post room, and it's full. It's 50 mini makes. So it's what I call Sunday afternoon projects. So if you just want to have a little stitch, but you're not sure what you want to stitch, in there you've got 50 projects, little purses and little bags and little mats and just lovely projects that you can sit down 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon while Im indoors is perhaps watching football. I'm not being biased here, but I kind of am. Then you can have your hour or two just putting something together, and it's beautiful. Even though I say so myself, it has the most amazing pictures and drawings. There's the back.
Fab.
Haven't changed a bit in 20 years. You've got to choose the best photo, haven't you? It wouldn't be right. But when you flick through, and I'm not going to be able to do it justice at all. The photography is lovely. Obviously, every pattern that I do, I make a real effort to get the photography right. There's notes there as well. There's phrases that, you know, inspirational phrases. There's projects that I've done, like there's like inspirational photos. So let me just show you this, because we just happened to see it. So that's a quilt from last year, which is foundation paper piece. Now that's not in the book because it's too complicated for a mini make, but it's there as inspiration. So you know what? Try your hand at some of these projects on here. Have a little go. And then you don't know, you might be able to aspire to other things. Like I say, there's some really super designs in here. Oh, and I've got a USB as well.
Oh, right.
So I have a USB with 5 projects on. We can see them there. Now, I've got a big design team. I've got a bigger admin team. They are absolutely fabulous. And Nicola, she made all of those that you can see on the screen there. And we put it together as a USB. And yeah, it's been very successful. So the USB is like, you're going to a workshop, you need these. So you've got like a big case there. It's called the Abbey case to put all your bits and bobs in, your pattern, all those bits in. You've got Linden, which you can have all your sort of needles and smaller tools in there. You've got Zoe, which is a lovely pouch that will take your threads and your bobbins and things like that. You've got Serendipity, which just about see. It's my most best-selling pattern ever. And it's like, where you put your phone, it's a crossbody bag, it's where you put your phone, there's a zippy pocket as well for your pennies, because you've got to have a cream cake. And then you've got Daffy, which is a lovely pin and needle case. So it's, yeah, so that USB is on my website as well. But they're just great little patterns. And for the first time, because this was launched probably March at Duxford, and this is the first time I've offered this with a bit of a discount. So apologies to all the ladies that bought it at full price. It's still great value, but yes, now you can get it with a little bit of a discount, can't you, Kim?
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. And what I'll do is I'll put the links on for everybody to be able to go to your website. Now, Alistair is also doing a giveaway for us. He's going to give us, now this is for the best comment, or we'll pick it out randomly from the comments that we receive. You're going to give away 2 meters of Italian denim fabric and one of the wrist pin cushions, which you probably saw a lot of the contestants. I'm just digging here for mine. A lot of the contestants were wearing these yesterday. That when we looked, and these are really handy for keeping your pins. So thank you, Alistair, for that. You're also offering us a discount code as well, which I'm going to pop on that one.
So throughout the whole website, if you put in capital letters BEE, so B15, it will run for the whole course of our critiques. So you can go on there and you can get 15% off for the whole 10 weeks.
Thank you very much. So all that leaves for me to do now is say a huge thank you to Lizzy for taking time out to join us and be the first one for 2024 for the Sewing Bee. Thank you again, Alistair. I'm a thorn in his side, you see. He can't get rid of me.
Oh, I forgot to tell you this morning, John Scott has he's confirmed date. So he's going to be here on, I think it's the 9th of July.
Oh, fantastic. So we'll have other people lined up throughout the series this time, which is absolutely brilliant. Now, next week's challenge is a fleece challenge and a sporting challenge. That will give us lots to discuss. So as I say, thank you everybody for watching, for joining in. If you want us to pose any questions to our future guests, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. And if you like and subscribe to the House of Alistair YouTube channel, you'll get alerted as soon as these videos go live. So thank you very much, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.